Hidden in the mountains of South America, surrounded by jungle, is the ruin of an ancient city. It is one of many which were abandoned when the great prehistoric empire of the Incas was destroyed by the Spanish conquerors. Long before the white men of Europe discovered the Western Hemisphere, there were early civilizations believed to have been developed in North and Central America. About 3,000 years ago, one group of these early people may have journeyed southward, possibly by sea, and settled in South America. Centuries later, the groups remaining in the north progressed to form the civilizations of the Mayas and Aztecs, but by this time contact between the continents appears to have been lost. For the people of the south developed a different kind of culture. Later, they became known as the Incas. Historians are not certain about these origins, but the best available evidence supports this theory. The Inca Empire had its center in the Peruvian Andes. Its most rapid growth began about 1100 AD. By 1530, the Incas had spread along about 2,500 miles of coast. Their empire included most of what are now the countries of Ecuador, Peru, Bolivia, and also smaller portions of Colombia, Argentina, and Chile. Compared to the United States of America, the Inca Empire was about this size. The population of the United States is about 140 million persons. That of the Incas was probably about 20 million. The greatest numbers lived on the high Andean plateaus of Peru and Ecuador. Some of their ancient cities have been found in the mountains, but many more remain hidden in the dense undergrowth. The Incas were expert stoneworkers. Their material was often hard granite. It was probably cut and shaped with other stones, for the Incas did not have hard metals like iron and steel, nor any machinery, nor even know the use of the wheel. And yet accurate stonework was accomplished without mechanical aids. No mortar was used, yet in some religious buildings, the stones were so carefully fitted that even today, after centuries of destructive force by weather and earthquake, a knife blade cannot fit in the crack between them. This is the entrance to a courtyard in a small mountain village. The Incas often placed a stone ring above such doorways and built stone pegs into the walls on each side. These were used in fastening a log barricade over the opening. This drawing shows how the lower end was held by a hole in the ground and the upper portion tied to the ring and pegs. Rafters for the roofs may have been tied to such stone projections. The ancient cities are roofless now, but once buildings were covered with thatch, like this one which has been restored. Terraces were sometimes needed to provide level ground for raising food. Projecting stones often formed steps for climbing the terraces. These stone boxes were fountains, bringing water to each terrace level. The water started at mountain springs and drained from one fountain to the next. The water is still running in many of these Inca fountains, although they have been abandoned for many hundreds of years. This odd stone may have been used in the study of astronomy. This entire room was hollowed out of solid rock. It may have been a tomb. The exact purpose of many such things is uncertain, since the Incas were unable to write, and their history was handed down by inaccurate legends from father to son. The Incas built an extensive system of roads throughout their empire. Some were merely wide trails, climbing steeply to mountain villages, or crossing rivers on swinging suspension bridges. The main roads, however, were carefully built and often paved with stone. Many are still in use by today's descendants of the Incas. A modern highway following an old Inca road passes the ruin of a rest house called a tambo. They were shelters for Inca travelers. Messages could be carried 100 miles a day by relay runners. Each covered the few miles between tambos, then gave his message to a fresh runner waiting there. Since the Incas never developed writing, messages were recorded on the quipus, a bundle of cords about 2 feet long. Groups of branching cords were colored and knotted. The colors and position and numbers of knots and cords gave a message. Use of the quipus was limited to the ruling classes. The Incas wove fine fabrics of the wool of plateau animals, the llama, alpaca, and vicuña. Inca skill in pottery making was also excellent. This necklace is made of coral beads. The Incas accumulated a great deal of gold and silver. It was used principally for ornament. This golden image of a dog was probably worn from a necklace. Most pieces of jewelry were hollow. This golden head ornament was worn by an Inca ruler. Beside it are ornamental golden feathers and bracelets. These priceless treasures were found very recently in an ancient tomb. These drawings show how the central square of Cusco, the Inca capital, probably looked. Under the Inca government, the people owned nothing but their own clothing. The land, its crops and minerals, and what the people manufactured belonged to the ruling Inca. His representatives divided all the goods among the people as they saw fit. There was no money, since nothing was owned by the people and therefore nothing could be purchased. Gold and silver was useful mainly as ornament, most of it concentrated here in Cusco. Many doorways were made of solid gold. Niches in the walls contained golden ornaments, and plates of gold hung on the outer walls of the Temple of the Sun. Inside the temple was a huge golden replica of the sun. A doorway in the east wall allowed the rising sun to strike this golden image. Seated in golden chairs along one wall were the mummified bodies of the previous rulers, wearing the clothes and ornaments they preferred in life. Across from them were the mummies of their queens. All this gold was the accumulation of centuries, but now this magnificence is gone. Stories of Inca wealth reached the ears of the Spaniards. In the early 1500s, they had crossed the Atlantic and conquered the Aztecs and Mayas of Central America. In search of more gold, an expedition under Francisco Pizarro sailed to what is now Peru and climbed the Andes. They numbered less than 200 men, but by capturing the Inca ruler, Atahualpa, they assumed control of the empire with very little struggle. At Cusco, the Spaniards stripped the gold and silver from the temples and destroyed most of the city. Later, the conquerors rebuilt most of Cusco in their own style. Christian churches have replaced temples once dedicated to sun worship. The wall under these arches was part of the Temple of the Sun. Spanish plazas mark where the Incas had gardens or public squares. The Spaniards built a church where the Inca ruler had his residence. It became the University of Cusco in 1862. The Spaniards often built on Inca foundations that withstood Cusco's destruction. Inca walls often have a second story above them, built of clay bricks by modern plateau people. Although over 400 years old, Inca workmanship remains far stronger and more attractive than recent construction. The snake design indicates that this wall was probably part of an Inca temple. This square doorway was built by the Incas. The arches were built by the early Spaniards. Modern Indians have filled in the space between them with crude clay bricks. Most descendants of the Incas still speak the Indian dialects of their forefathers, although the official language of the modern Andean countries, Spanish, is often heard in the cities. The Cathedral of Cusco is on the exact spot where the Incas had their temple to Viracocha, their god of creation. The Spaniards built the cathedral of the stones from the destroyed Inca temple. These crude carvings were made by very early Spanish colonists. Cusco is a strange blending of old and new. In front of the old cathedral, built of even more ancient building blocks, is a telephone pole, and at its foot a modern gasoline pump to supply the autos of present-day Cusco. The empire of the Incas is almost forgotten by the present-day people of the plateau. Brown-skinned natives whose forefathers may have been Inca rulers mingle with white-skinned natives whose forefathers came as conquerors with Francisco Pizarro. Modern Indians walk among the ruined temples of their ancestors without knowing when or why they were built. A great empire dissolved under Spanish occupation, leaving little behind it except ruined cities hidden in the mountains where once lived the Incas, ancients of the Andes.
A curious, mysterious fear now seized the people, for there had been numerous signs in the sky: lightning, comets, an eagle pursued by a flock of buzzards. The soothsayers predicted an avalanche of calamities from which neither the empire nor the royal line would ever recover. Then, as Huayna Capac, the 12th Inca, lay dying, he prophesied the arrival of a new, hitherto unknown people who would conquer his kingdom and become its absolute masters. Long before the Incas, long before the rise and fall of other pre-Columbian civilizations, there was the land. Soaring snow-capped peaks form the Andean Cordillera, the backbone of Peru. To the east stretch the lush, dense forests of the Amazon. Mysterious, thinly settled, it is a region still largely undeveloped and unexplored. Westward lies the Pacific, once an inviolate frontier. Bordering it for more than 1,000 miles runs a thin strip of sun-scorched desert, its arid wastes intercut by isolated valleys. Between the sea and the majestic Andes rise a steady succession of foothills, passes, basins, and high plains. The latter, often savage in their beauty, are the timeless grazing grounds of the llama and alpaca. It was from the harsh realities of his physical world that the ancient Peruvian evolved, to hunt, to plant, to build his temples and his cities. Several thousand years more would elapse before they learned to grow and harvest simple food plants, such as beans, gourds, squash, and peppers. As the reliance on agriculture increased, there was a corresponding cultural progress. Man now had time between harvests for activities other than the production of food. It was during this formative period that religion would emerge as a unifying cultural force. The first important Andean culture, the Chavin, derives its name from an important ceremonial center in the northern highlands, Chavin de Huantar. Primarily a religious cult, this Chavin culture spawned a fanged god, half human, half feline, whose stylized aspects would later permeate much of Peruvian art. The decline of the Chavin culture, about 400 BC, near the time of the greatest heights of Greek civilization, resulted in the rise of a number of strong regional cultures, most notably the Paracas, the Mochica, and the Nazca. Mummies were entombed, wrapped in layers of exquisitely embroidered mantles, each a triumph of the textile art. Coastal grave sites were filled with pottery of amazing variety and beauty. The vigor and exuberance of these early cultures also found expression in the creation of enormous religious structures. The largest, the Temple of the Sun, was built by the Mochicas. It covered 8 acres at its base and is estimated to have contained more than 130 million sun-baked bricks. This golden age of integration and development would be followed by the somber, all-embracing culture of Tiahuanaco. On the wind-swept plains near Lake Titicaca, imposing ruins testified to a highly organized and powerful religious political movement. The severe Tiahuanacan style would spread throughout much of Peru, but the political influence of Tiahuanaco would end abruptly about the year 1000. The pressures of increased populations created violent competition for the sources of food production. As one group sought and gained control over another, there was a shift from rural to urban living. Chan-Chan, capital of the mighty Chimu Empire, covered an area of 11 square miles. Because of the dry climate, the intricate decorations of carved and molded mud have been miraculously preserved. Urbanization would also be a feature of the smaller kingdoms of the coast. Pachacamac, with its great temple pyramid, was one such metropolis. Another was the administrative center of Tambo, Colorado. Many of the adobe walls still retain traces of their original colors. The climax of these continuous and intensive power struggles was reached in the early 15th century with the inception of the Inca Empire. Within a few generations, the Incas would conquer and control all other peoples, thus completing a drama that had begun so many thousands of years before. What were the thoughts and aspirations of these men long dead? What were their customs, their rituals, their myths? These are questions that becloud a full understanding of the ancient Peruvians. They left no written record, so we are obliged to search elsewhere for clues to their identity. Although looting in Peru is as old as the conquest, careful archeological excavation is relatively recent. Yet within the space of only a few decades, extraordinary progress has been made in the study of pre-Columbian man. It is often the smaller objects that best express the Indian's innate sense of beauty. Even on the everyday products of his existence, he lavished skill and artistry. Working within the confines of strict and formal idioms, he was often able to achieve the miraculous, a highly individual blending of form, design, and color. The potter's wheel was unknown to the ancient Peruvian. Articles were shaped by hand or cast in molds. They were decorated, ornamented, incised, or engraved with subject matter that ranged from abstract patterns of religious symbolism to completely realistic representations of people, plants, animals, and birds. Women were chiefly responsible for the weaving. Employing every known technique, and some as yet unexplained, they produced magnificent textiles whose colors still glow after being buried for centuries in the dry sand. Metals and alloys were worked into articles of great delicacy and sophistication. Gold was esteemed for its beauty and permanence, but was not used as money. It symbolized the sun, a god, and was therefore beyond value. The arts of the ancient Peruvian are among the glories of the Americas. So intense and clear was his expression, so honest and immediate his vision, that we are able centuries later to feel the very pulse of his existence. In his hands, the past becomes the present. All that had taken place before would culminate in the dazzling empire of the Incas. Their capital was Cusco, navel of the world, the center from which all vitality and authority radiated. A model of city planning. At one time, some 200,000 persons lived in its complex of temples, palaces, sanctuaries, and private dwellings. The more important buildings were constructed of beautifully fitted granite blocks. The walls of many can be seen even today, where they were incorporated into later Spanish structures. Such was the capital's prestige that it was said an Indian who was going to Cusco always stood aside when meeting an Indian coming from the city. Imperial, divine Cusco. It stunningly embodied the order, the power, the mystique of the Inca world. The Inca genius became transfixed in stone. Supremely confident of their civilization, they built ceaselessly, unhesitatingly, and for all time. Sacsayhuaman, the brooding fortress overlooking Cusco, was a direct result of the power and authority of the Inca social system. Thousands of Indians labored for decades to quarry, shape, and move the cyclopean stones, which they likened to earth, crystallized and put into geometrical form. Whatever the Incas touched became ordered, logical, altogether functional. For example, they never constructed walled villages. Instead, they built defense units containing fortresses, temples, and barracks. Agricultural terraces made some of the defense units completely self-sustaining. All was ruled with mathematical precision. Sites were laid out by professional architects sent from Cusco. Houses of the common people were generally clustered into groups near the Acropolis, where they could seek protection in time of danger. Once upon a time. From these legendary beginnings, the children of the sun extended and consolidated their empire until in time it would be comparable to Caesar's. It was called Tawantinsuyo, which in Quechua means land of the four corners of the world. Roads linked the land north and south. Every few miles there was a post house erected to provide lodgings for the official traveler. An elaborate courier service using trained runners, for the horse was still unknown, provided rapid communications with even the most distant provinces. The economy of the Incas stemmed from the land and its products. 1/3 belonged to the sun, or state religion. 1/3 was the property of the Inca, who was the state. And the remaining third was owned and worked collectively by the common people. They formed the base of a gigantic social pyramid. Next in line were state officials and their families, followed by nobles of the royal blood. Ruling over the whole of this wondrous edifice was the Sapa, or Supreme Inca. There were many reasons for the Inca success as imperialists, but perhaps the most important was their sense of mission. It was embodied in those words of easy pacification. Amamancha chiku ichu nyoka Inca kani. Fear not. for I am an Inca. In 1527, the empire suddenly found itself with two Incas contending for the throne, Atahualpa and Huáscar. A bitter civil war ensued that greatly weakened the empire. Plagues and prophecies added further to the despair and irresolution of the populace. And then on November 16, 1532, it would all come to an end. With the capture of Atahualpa, death, famine, and destruction became man's common lot. Silence reigns at Machu Picchu, its sleep of centuries barely disturbed by its discovery a few decades ago. Ferns and wild strawberries grow among the steps and terraces. Lichens coat the stones with gray and green patinas. Nature is patient. She can wait to reclaim what is rightfully hers. The clouds lift, and for a moment we are struck by an overpowering sensation of a vista stretching far back, filled with the specters of the past. For here, man lived and dreamed and died in splendid isolation. It is then that Machu Picchu becomes more than just an Inca ruin. It becomes a symbol of all the vanished peoples of the Andes who lived out their lives untouched by the sweep and panoply of world history. It is then that Machu Picchu becomes a majestic confirmation of man's ability to move from darkness unto light.
The Earthen Kingdom, Chan Chan Archaeological Zone. The Chan Chan Archaeological Zone is in the desert area of Peru. It's the site of remains of the Chimu Kingdom, which thrived between the 13th and 15th centuries. Numerous palaces were built by successive kings. The city is spread over an extensive area. The buildings were made of adobe bricks. Adobe is easily eroded. The site was simultaneously inscribed in 1986 on the World Heritage List and the World Heritage in Danger List. Each palace complex has a temple and a square and forms a small town. This is the king's treasure house. The holes in the adobe blocks help air to circulate through the corridors. This building was 3 meters high when it was built. The rooms stored offerings to the king. There was no system of writing in the Chimu Kingdom. The reliefs here are thought to represent the type of items stored in the room. The seabird represents sea produce. The room with the moon was used to store gold and jewelry for the king. The gold and silver items excavated at the site are remarkable for their intricate decoration. They reflect a high level of skill among Chimu craftsmen. This artifact includes a figure of the Chimu king represented in white. These are maracas players. Here a flute player. The king is attending a banquet. Explanation for the Chimu king's success can be found in these ditches running across the field. They're the remains of irrigation channels. The Chimu kings brought snowmelt water from the Andes and converted an arid desert into a green oasis. People harvested cotton and corn in these fields. The kingdom also gained from proximity to the ocean. Local fishermen still use straw-made boats. They kneel on the boat. The same image can be seen carved in stone. The boat in the relief is surrounded by marine life. It also shows how fish were caught. The Chimu people use their natural resources. Much about their lives still remains to be discovered. Efforts to preserve the World Heritage Site here will continue alongside efforts to unravel the mysteries of an ancient culture.
You can see over here, Wilder, actually on the side of the pyramid type structure. I mean, it may not be a true pyramid, but then you got the slope, which gives you an idea. Let's have a look. It's where we've just climbed up. It goes all the way down to the river, which is way so down there. You've got a waterfall which flows down. And the top is sort of hidden away. What's really interesting here is you follow the line of stone, there's a hole, and it seems that there's a second layer of stone beneath the blocks. Now this is, and it's very smooth, it's the same kind of material, but there's a gap between the top layer of blocks and this smooth stone. Now this is pretty weird. You wouldn't expect that. I mean, just to give you an idea, let's see, I can sort of show you that this actually goes inside there. Now, it's a broom handle I've got with me. See, there's actually a gap in there. There's actually a hole underneath the stone. You know, idea of the size of the hole. The broom, yeah. So it goes in pretty deep. Yeah. Doesn't look very natural, does it? Okay.
All right, so we're going to get into this book right here. It is called Dead Men's Secrets by Jonathan Gray. Continues, says Tijuanaco, Bolivia. Things that can happen have happened here. The site is built 12,000 feet above sea level. This is oxygen-poor air, in which the slightest exertion can cause nausea and worse. Yet blocks of up to 200 tons were maneuvered over distances up to 90 miles. In rarefied air, this is not possible by muscular strength. This grand complex was built with a technical skill embarrassing to us and by a method unknown to us. Here was a city of startling dimensions, all right? Here in Bolivia, okay? Acres and acres lie covered with truncated pyramids, artificial hills, lines of monoliths, platforms, underground rooms, and giant gates, which incorporate architecture beyond our technical scope at the present day. Many large gateways were built from a single stone. The Gate of the Sun is the biggest carved monolith in the world, a single block 10 feet high and 6 feet wide. The size of some of the buildings is astounding. The fortress of Acapana, 650 by 496 feet, was once a pyramid 167 feet high. The Sun Temple was on a platform 440 feet long by 390 feet wide, composed of blocks 100 to 200 tons each. Walls of the temple complex itself had blocks 60 tons each. Steps of the stone stairway were 50 tons apiece. Here were terraced temples like those of faraway Babylon and Nineveh. The walls of the palace were 220 feet long by 150 feet wide. Its throne room was 160 feet long by 130 feet wide. The steps from the palace entrance were washed by the lake, now receding and 50 miles away. The paved court under our feet is 80 feet square, with a covered gallery 45 feet on one side. Court and hall are one single block of dressed stone. Building blocks. One is 36 feet long and 7 feet wide, fitted without line or mortar and without any joint showing. Nearly every stone is micro-accurately cut and polished, nicked, mortised, and occasionally even beveled. Water conduits have a completely modern shape with smooth cross-sections, polished inner and outer surfaces, and accurate edges. See these half pipes? They have grooves and corresponding protrusions that fit together. Plundered. Spanish invaders stole the interlocking copper or silver keys, which secured the stonework from earthquake damage. Until then, they had survived for thousands of years. Subsequent earthquakes leveled the structure. As late as the 19th century, there were imposing colonnades to admire, of which sadly there is now no trace. Many of the great buildings were dynamited, and untold treasures disappeared. One 24-foot statue remains. All right, you see, they were like blowing things up, destroying stuff, huh? Now we go to Sacsayhuaman, Peru. All right, make sure you check out my video on Sacsayhuaman, aka the city of David, the fortress. Yes, the citadel. That is the fortress. It's going to read here. All right, it says here the ruined mountaintop fortress of Sacsayhuaman, Hawaman, Hawaman, pronounced sexy woman, overlooks the ancient capital of Cusco. All right, overlooking the lower city, right? The upper city and lower city, just like Jerusalem had. Its terrace walls are 1,500 feet long and 54 feet wide. Enormous blocks, up to 25 feet wide and of 50 to 200 tons, are so intricately flush one to the other, it is impossible to pass a knife blade between them. One block in an outer wall has faces cut to fit perfectly with 12 other blocks. There are other blocks cut with many as 10, 12, and even 36 sides, okay? 36 sides, guys, and with no mortar between them. Take notice how each fits exactly to the next touching stones from every side, including the inner surfaces. It defies belief. The whole system interlocks and dovetails, making the chance fitting of each block or the grinding back and forth in situ for a perfect fit impossible. Even if it had been possible, the power required to do this would be sufficient to supply the needs of a modern city. Do you see the problem? All right, you guys listening? This is what is in America. They're talking about savages. There was no people here, no great civilizations. And they can't tell you till this day who built Sacsayhuaman. The Incas even said that it was already there. Within a few hundred yards of the complex, an abandoned single block the size of a 5-story house weighs an estimated 20 tons. Yes, 20 tons, okay? Can you guys imagine the way, like, how do people move something like that? There is nothing like that. It is impeccably cut and dressed. We have no combination of machinery today that could dislodge such a weight, let alone move it any distance. This indicates mastery of a technology which we have as yet not attained. The quarries are 20 miles away, on the other side of a mountain range and a deep river gorge. How the gigantic stones were moved across such hopeless terrain is anyone's guess. You guys gotta understand, this is mountain tops, going down trails, up hills, up valleys, down rivers. Come on. And that's what he's saying. How did they do all that? Moving on, we go to Ollantaytambo, Peru. Fortress walls of tightly fitted blocks weighing 150 to 250 tons each are of very hard andesite. Special tools are required to penetrate such hard rock. The quarry is on a mountaintop 7 miles away at a 10,000 feet altitude. Would you believe the builders carved and dressed the hard stone, lowered the 200-ton blocks down the mountainside, crossed a river canyon with 1,000-foot sheer rock walls, and then raise the blocks up another mountainside to fit them in place. Do you guys listen to that? This is what they did. How did they do that? This is way more advanced than what's going on supposedly over there in Egypt. You know, it's mostly flat. Over here in the Americas, especially in this area, South America, they're going through mountain ranges. You guys got to understand, that's a lot harder. How do you move that weight in ancient times? Again, they've been lying to us about history. Wall mirrors composed of 6 gigantic masses of rosette porphyry, each weigh at least 20 tons, and one is 40 tons. All right, wall mirrors, okay? The more one studies these buildings, the more one feels that a race of scientific giants built them, all right? Scientific giants. Chanchan, Peru. This city of the Chimu Empire has walls up to 40 feet thick. Buildings were richly decorated with stylized animals, flowers, and geometric designs. All right, so before we continue, I want to show a video about what they're talking about. Little animation of what it used to look like.
The Earthen Kingdom, Chan Chan Archaeological Zone. The Chan Chan Archaeological Zone is in the desert area of Peru. It's the site of remains of the Chimu Kingdom, which thrived between the 13th and 15th centuries. Numerous palaces were built by successive kings. The city is spread over an extensive area. The buildings were made of adobe bricks. Adobe is easily eroded. The site was simultaneously inscribed in 1986 on the World Heritage List and the World Heritage in Danger List. Each palace complex has a temple and a square and forms a small town. This is the king's treasure house. The holes in the adobe blocks help air to circulate through the corridors. This building was 3 meters high when it was built. The rooms stored offerings to the king. There was no system of writing in the Chimu Kingdom. The reliefs here are thought to represent the type of items stored in the room. The seabird represents sea produce. The room with the moon was used to store gold and jewelry for the king. The gold and silver items excavated at the site are remarkable for their intricate decoration. They reflect a high level of skill among Chimu craftsmen. This artifact includes a figure of the Chimu king represented in white. These are maracas players. Here a flute player. The king is attending a banquet. Explanation for the Chimu king's success can be found in these ditches running across the field. They're the remains of irrigation channels. The Chimu kings brought snowmelt water from the Andes and converted an arid desert into a green oasis. People harvested cotton and corn in these fields. The kingdom also gained from proximity to the ocean. Local fishermen still use straw-made boats. They kneel on the boat. The same image can be seen carved in stone. The boat in the relief is surrounded by marine life. It also shows how fish were caught. The Chimu people use their natural resources. Much about their lives still remains to be discovered. Efforts to preserve the World Heritage Site here will continue alongside efforts to unravel the mysteries of an ancient culture.
All right, continuing in the book, Dead Men's Secrets by Jonathan Gray, says Machu Picchu, Peru, perched in the Andes on a razorback high above a horseshoe canyon. This is a breathtakingly beautiful sight. These fabled ruins offer romance and mystery. But just notice those squared blocks. They're 16 feet long. And look above these doors. Each granite lintel weighs 3 tons. We enter a room. Each wall is composed of a single solid megalith. All right? Listen to that. Each room is a single solid megalith carved into 32 angles, which join it to the neighboring blocks perfectly. Such walls astound modern architects. And again, you guys don't know Machu Picchu or what it looks like and where it's located, high above the mountains, high on the mountains. Again, also a very hard place to get to, especially when you're bringing such heavy stones from far away quarries. Right? Something to think about. It says here, Pachacamac, Peru. Here the temples were fastened with gold nails that weighed a ton each, all right? Gold nails. I mean, do you guys listen to this? Gold nails that weigh a ton? Pachacamac, Peru, okay? Amazon jungle, Brazil. Numerous remote cities lie between Goiás and the Roosevelt, all right? We've read about all these cities in my South American videos, all right? Where we, numerous videos we've gone over what they have found down there. Again, numerous remote cities lie between Goiás and the Roosevelt. One has a triple arch formed of stone slabs, weighing at least 50 tons apiece. How did they do it? Then we got Paraíba, Brazil, a huge ruined fortress with walls over 80 feet high and 16 feet thick, and with an inner wall which once measured 492 feet long by 150 feet wide. We go to Quito, Ecuador. It says the Panecillo, a big hill within the city limits of Quito, is of such size that it was always considered to be natural. Recent investigation, however, has revealed it to be a giant, unstratified, artificial mound. Okay, it's a mound. Who's the mound builders over here in Quito, Ecuador? They thought it was a hill. It's a large, high mound, 600 feet or equal to 60 stories in height. Already some surprising constructions are coming to light here. That's amazing, right, guys? So this is the Panecillo again, and you can see it's just a huge mound. They thought it was a hill, and then they have their little statue on top. I find it interesting that they put a statue there, right on the top. They knew what it was this whole time. There is the mound itself. It might even be a pyramid under there. They're saying a mound, but mounds are not only in North America. Look at this huge mound. I've seen many mounds here in Costa Rica that, they don't declare them to be, but I, can tell they're mounds. Very impressive. I mean, it does stick out. Look at it. That's a mound in Ecuador, in Quito. Look what they put on top, right? And they have built all over it. Imagine if they knew that was a mound pyramid they're on. Yeah, I find things like this very amazing. What do you guys think? Wow, look at that, right? Anybody from Ecuador watching this, did you know that was a mound you had there? Right in Quito. Quito is the capital of Ecuador. You got this beautiful, majestic mountain. That might be a pyramid, who knows? Unless it's a volcano or something. But yeah, it looks very pyramidal. At the top of the mound, overlooking Quito. A prehistoric city, Oregon, 1905. A discovery has been made in the Andes Mountains, 250 miles from Arauco, Chile, of a city deserted for 2,000 years, but once inhabited, presumably by Aztecs of much larger stature than those who lived in Central America, according to the story told by two men just returned from Chile, all right? So they're just saying Aztecs probably. They don't know. How can Aztecs be down there? Older Aztecs are kind of more new, They expect that their story will add to the scientific knowledge of South American prehistoric races and are now hurrying east to present the result of their researches to American and German scientists. The discoverers of the ancient city are Professor Emil von Verges of Berlin, a famous archaeologist of Germany, and William J. Hemingway of New York, who has spent several years exploring South America. At the head of a party of 5, they have spent a year in South America on a special expedition of exploration. The deserted city was found in a small valley, reached only after weeks of hardships. It was in an excellent state of preservation. The explorers finding stone houses, supposed to have been erected 20 centuries ago, crumbling and grown over with mosses and shrubs, just standing upright. Ancient tools of husbandry, household implements of stone, and hermetically sealed graves. Hermetically sealed graves give evidence of a high state of civilization. A large quantity of articles are being taken east. They're being what? Taken to the east. These articles, right? These artifacts they're finding here in the Andes, they're bringing them to where? The east. They're going to put them in the museums over there, guys. They're going to say, oh, we found this in Egypt. Oh, we found this in Babylon, Iraq. They're clearly telling you in this article, right? The articles are being taken east. The city comprised 1,500 souls. Von Burgess believes that either flood or disease exterminated the prehistoric race. Probably the latter, all right? Or flood. Now, since we're reading newspaper articles, and we just read that story, right? We're going to the New York Times here, right? NewYorkTimes.com. Says here, a legendary lost city in Andes gives hint of mysterious culture by John Noble Wilford, right? This was written in February 1st, 1985. It says, high in the Andes of Peru, explorers have examined and photographed in great detail the remains of a legendary lost city that archaeologists believe may rival the spectacular Inca ruins at Machu Picchu. The ruins of vast walls and terraces, buildings and tombs and statuary, all perched on the steep, cloud-shrouded eastern slopes of the Andes overlooking a nameless river, were presumably a major center of an early, resourceful, and mysterious people whose civilization flourished long before the glory days of the Incas, all right? Long before the Incas. American and Peruvian archaeologists, excited by the prospects of making important discoveries about a previously unknown culture, announced plans yesterday to return to the remote jungle site next summer to begin comprehensive studies that could continue over the next 15 years. The announcement was made at a news conference at the University of Colorado at Boulder. I remember this was from 1985, so whatever happened. Mystery about culture. The site known as Gran Pajatén was apparently occupied by an unknown people from AD 500 to 1500. According to preliminary studies by University of Colorado archaeologists, it is situated in the province of San Martin in a cloud forest, 8,600 feet above sea level, a place of almost perpetual rain, dense jungle growth, and no human habitation. All right, so at one point, that was a metropolis right there. And it's funny how they disappeared, supposedly, or they just, stopped being a culture right when the Spaniards, the Sephardic Jews, Moorish, and other Catholics came by. One of the mysteries of these people, beside their identity and relationship to the Incas and to other known prehistoric cultures on Peru's north coast, is how they managed to maintain an apparently thriving culture under such daunting physical circumstances. Dr. Jane Wheeler, an anthropologist at the University of Colorado, said, "We're intrigued by the evidence of dense human habitation because such jungle areas are apparently unoccupied in other parts of the world. High civilization." Dr. Tom Lennon, a University of Colorado archaeologist who explored the site last summer, said in a telephone interview that the evidence at Gran Pajatén was of a high civilization that developed a distinctive style of architecture and might have had an advanced agriculture. The site is probably only one of many in the area, Dr. Lennon said, and may not even be the most important one. He's saying there might even be more that they haven't found, and it might not even be the main site. Dr. Wheeler and Dr. Lennon are to direct the new exploration program, which is being undertaken with the cooperation of the Peruvian Institute of Culture and two Peruvian universities. Commenting on the plans, Dr. Craig Morris, the South American curator at the American Museum of Natural History in New York, said that Gran Pajatén is an impressive site, very likely to produce interesting and important discoveries. According to Dr. Luis Lumbreras, a scholar of prehistory at the Institute of Andean Archaeology in Lima, the ancient peoples who inhabited the remote eastern slopes of the Andes are the last undescribed pre-Hispanic civilization in Peru. You guys listen to that? They're undescribed. They don't know who these people were. So if they don't know who these people were, how can they say who they were not? Right? Who's these people that disappeared, who are undescribed, huh? And how come you don't know where you're from, huh? Today. Scholars regard the pre-Hispanic civilizations centered in Peru as the most impressive in South America. The heyday of the Incas, who controlled a region from Colombia south to Chile and Argentina, lasted less than 300 years. ending with the arrival of the Spanish in the early 16th century. The arrival of who? Who? The Spaniards. Who's the Spaniards? Gran Pahateng has been a legend and lore that has fascinated archaeologists for years, particularly after the discovery of Machu Picchu in 1911. The phrase lost cities was popularized by Hiram Bingham, the discoverer of Machu Picchu, to characterize the ruins of ancient cities in the mountains of Peru, lost to all but a few nearby residents. It has been the subject of rumors and unsuccessful expeditions since the beginning of this century, Dr. Lennon said of Gran Pahateng. In 1963, Peruvian archaeologists found the site, spent a few days of reconnaissance, and then abandoned it again to the jungle. The lost city was lost again. Impetus for explorers. But last summer, 4 Coloradans, inspired by the legends and the 1963 discovery, trekked to the site by mule and then by foot, an arduous journey of several days, and spent more than a week examining and photographing the ruins. Accompanying Dr. Lennon were Dr. Alan Storno, a surgeon, Dr. Alan Stormo, a surgeon, John Lovett, a businessman, and Dr. Strand Brenton, another surgeon, all of Boulder. Dr. Lennon said many of the structures at Gran Pahateng were in remarkably good condition. 3-foot-high wood carvings, still well preserved, hung from the eaves of slate-tiled roofs over burial towers built into the mountainside. Do you guys hear this? Large pieces of fabric and undamaged pottery were found. Decorative exterior paint on some structures was preserved. The burial towers were connected by a narrow pathway skirting the edge of a 1,000-foot cliff. Cairns, possibly burial places, dotted the site. Below the burial towers were at least 16 multi-storied round buildings and 2 rectangular structures, the heart of Gran Pahateng. Some of the decorations included carved stone faces with representations of feather headdresses, okay? With what? Representations of feather headdresses, all right? I'm going to show you guys that wasn't only in North America. I found a lot of the Maya vases showing the Mayas wearing feathered headdresses just like the Sioux wear. So they found it here too, geometric designs and drawings of birds and animals. The explorers also discovered the signs of terraced fields cut into the steep mountainside, which they said indicated both sophisticated agricultural practices and long-term habitation. Gran Pahateng is situated in a region of unspoiled jungle and steep river valleys that has been set aside as the Rio Abiseo National Park. The rivers in the region are tributaries of the Amazon. You understand? These are sources for the Amazon. All right, so we're going to continue. That was pretty cool, right? This ancient city up there nobody knows about. Who's the people that build it, right?
Robert Drake.